All right, recording is in progress.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series. My name is Reena Dabas, and I'm Education Director here at the Asian Community Development Center. Thank you for joining us for this important conversation on bridging two worlds, supporting children's identity and development in immigrant families. I want to start by sharing something personal. I have raised my own children in a foreign land, and I know firsthand questions that keep you up all night. Will my children remember where they come from? Am I being too strict or not strict enough? How do I help them succeed here while staying connected to our roots? These aren't just professional questions for me, they are deeply personal ones. And I know many of you watching are asking the same questions. We are navigating two cultures, two languages, and I would say sometimes two very different sets of expectations. And I must say, you're doing your best to honor your heritage while helping your children thrive in their new home. And if you have ever felt uncertain or wondered, am I doing this right? You're not alone. That's exactly why we are here today. While I bring my experience, I've also invited two incredible experts who can help us understand the research and science behind what we are experiencing. So let me introduce our guest, Dr. Meenal Rana from Humboldt University. Dr. Rana's research focuses on children and adolescents in immigrant families, looking at how young children develop their identity, navigate their relationships, and build resilience across cultures. Dr. Rana, thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And joining us is Dr. Hyun-Kyung from Humboldt University. Dr. Yu brings deep expertise in child development and family dynamics, particularly understanding how parents and children communicate and connect across generational and cultural differences. Dr. Yu, we are grateful to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So today we are blending, my experience with research expertise. So over the next, I would say 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and it can extend also depending upon how long we're going to talk. We're going to have an honest conversation about raising children between two cultures. The struggles, the questions, and most importantly, what actually helps. So today's conversation is organized into three segments. First, we will explore cultural identity, development, and then we will discuss about parent-child relationships. And finally, we will focus on practical strategies where we will discuss what, as a parent, you actually can do, starting from today to support your children. So let's begin with our first segment on cultural identity. And my first question is for Dr. Rana. Dr. Rana, let's start with something many parents struggle with. And I would say something I experienced myself raising my children. Parents see their children becoming too American, not speaking the home language, finding traditions embarrassing, and wanting to be like their friends. So, what's really happening developmentally when children seem to pull away from their heritage culture?
Thank you for asking this question, Dr. Dabas. Developmentally, children, when they are young, they start building their self-concept. And that self-concept is usually built in relationship with others. What others are doing, what, different socialization environments, including home, school, friends, other peers outside of school, what they are doing. And all those socialization contexts would shape the self-concept of young children. when children are in early elementary school years, there is constant comparison. Even though they might not say it, but there is constant comparison. If their friend has done the work faster than them, they start thinking like, oh, am I not that smart because my friend has done this work? So those comparisons start very early on. And identity is such a fluid and dynamic concept that we keep developing it throughout our life, not just in adolescent years. So those early explorations, when they want to be like their friends, and there is constant comparison of, parents compare them with um, children in their home country, whereas children compare their parents with, the American parents or wherever they have moved. So that constant comparison also leads to be someone to be able to succeed in a new environment. So I think that is also an important concept for parents to understand, that they need to do that, as like children need to do that to be able to figure out their way forward in a new culture or a different culture than their parents. So developmentally, they're doing a lot of exploration, a lot of comparisons, and identity is such a dynamic concept that it's not the end in adolescent years. So they will keep changing and reshaping that identity. I
So
don't know if I have answered that question.
no, you are being saying it correctly. So I think, Dr. Rana, what I'm hearing is that pulling away isn't necessarily rejection, right? It's actually a part of normal development.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's they want to be like that. And I could give some personal examples too.
Yeah.
When children I think there are a lot of factors that affect. So let's say if there is a big community, immigrant community in the area, that could look very different than if you are the only child in the classroom or in the school from that culture. So in those cases, it might be a bigger pull to be like someone else because you don't have role models or you don't have peers who are from the same heritage or same background or at least similar background to have that comparison with. So it depends on a lot of different factors. So yeah, they may not be just rejecting or pulling away. It's just like their way to cope with a new environment and to be able to navigate that environment, which is important for children to do that. And parents, adults to understand that it's a natural part of their development.
Great. So that's really a helpful context because, we as parents, sometimes we think that it's just a rejection on their behalf. So yeah, that's interesting. So I think to continue here and to talk about how we can merge these age differences and the normal phases of development, my question is for Dr. Yu. So, Dr. Yu, is this phase of so-called, as we said, normal development, as Dr. Rana has said, but when they are being rejecting one's culture, it seems to be a normal part of development, as what Dr. Rana is being suggesting. So what is your take on that? And also I would like to know that how does this look different for a child at age of 8 versus a teenager at 15 years?
Okay. So, thanks for bringing it up, Dr. Rana, that this as a more of the normal development rather than taking it as abnormal or maybe immigrant families are just experiencing. But probably during preteen or teenage years, they're exploring a lot of things and also critically thinking about their own culture or the dominant culture as well as minority cultures too. So again, cognitively, they're exploring, they're navigating, they're taking one aspect and also comparing with other aspects. And this is a perfect time for parents really engaging in those conversations, not necessarily highlighting the strength of the heritage cultures, but open conversations for children to really see where they're coming from, but as well as their peers are coming from. So again, for different age groups, this can be opportunity for them to explore different options and using their cognitive development as a part of their kind of landscape to really expand their understanding. Um, Another piece that I want to highlight here is um, instead of just sticking with the one particular culture, I think this is a time that we can really expand. There's a transnationalism,
Mm.
transnational cultures, transnational or transcultural identity, perhaps. Um, Instead of dividing into heritage culture and the dominant culture, again, the identity might be really fluent because of this transnational context where immigrant families are experiencing. And with the current technology and communication, the informations and cultural things are just so instant. They are going to be exposed to those things through their social media, through the YouTube or Netflix. Um, so again, this can be opportunity for them to um, be who they are, but using all this information to be enriching their identity rather than feeling like they are limited into one or the other cultural identity. I don't know if this kind of answers your question, but um, yeah, this is fascinating um, question and concept to really explore.
I am just I just want you to elaborate on this transnational identity maybe a little bit more so that the parents can understand it.
Yeah. So a few years ago, my colleague, Dr. Jung from Korea, and I wrote a chapter. Actually, Dr. Rana also contributed to that book. Um, and we explored about this transnationalism,
Mm.
social phenomenon that we are going in between different national boundaries. And many immigrant families and individuals experience this transnationalism. Um, and instead of sticking with one um, society, one culture, we're very fluent in terms
Mm.
how we are navigating different cultural context. And sometimes people talk about the transnational landscape, transnational social places, um, and which seems to be because of the current technology and we can travel from one place to another relatively easily. Still takes 14, 15 hours to get to India or 15 hours to get to Korea, but still much easier to have these kinds of connections uh,
Mm.
from families and friends in their heritage cultures. So again, um, this allows us to have this transnational identity. Um, and for children and adolescents, if they are immersed in this kinds of context early on, um, instead of feeling like they are, their cultural heritage or heritage cultures as a weakness, or deficits, they may see this as a cool opportunity, uh, transnational strength. Yeah, I went to Dubai or I went to South Korea or China and allows them to be actually feel good about who they are and have that connections with people back home where their families came from.
Interesting. And I'm sure hearing you explain, this whole concept and the development piece helps our parents understand now this whole concept differently. Because initially I have seen parents are being too worried about this whole concept of, raising children in a different context. But, more talking to you and Dr. Rana, I can now get that whatever our children are being going through, this is seem to be a very normal part of development. It's just that how we see that. Dr. Rana, you want to add something here?
I wanted to add something. I think Dr. Hyun-Kyung, you brought up a very good point in transnational identity. Gail Ferguson, one of the researchers, has talked about transnational enculturation, which is how we use a lot of technology as immigrant families or immigrant parents for our children to be able to speak with their grandparents over phone or over Zoom or over video call, now WhatsApp, like all those tools that we have in our pocket. And having that connection with the country of origin helps retain some of the cultural values, language, because sometimes grandparents may not understand English. So children are forced to speak in their native language with their families back home. So there is this concept of called transnational enculturation, which helps families retain their culture. And that's a cool way to keep up with the language and culture through different technologies.
It's true, Dr. Rana, and I have seen that, like my children, right from their childhood, we always make sure that they talk to their grandparents every day, and then, try to, explain to them and share with them how the day went and what they did in the school. And I think it's a great way of connecting also with their grandparents. So interesting. So I want to now bring this whole discussion to what is a healthy identity, basically. So, how can parents tell the difference between a child who's navigating their dual identity in a healthy way versus one who's genuinely struggling? So basically, what I'm trying to bring here is that what is a healthy bicultural identity, what it actually looks like. So I think this I would love to have both of you to answer this question. Maybe we can start with Dr. Rana if you want to bring up your understanding of what's a healthy bicultural identity actually look like.
I think this is a very difficult question because there is no formula for that. There is no set archetype which one is healthy, but I could speak it from. So I think, Doctor, you talked about cognitive development. So there is a phenomena called cognitive dissonance, which is when children are getting different messages in different contexts, or they're getting different messages about their identity. And Robert Sellers, who is one of the identity theorists and worked with Black young men's identity, he has talked about two concepts, which is private regard and public regard. So private regard is what we think about ourselves, and public regard is what other people think of us. So I think it's important for parents, instead of forcing the identity, giving the pride that we are really proud we are Indians. We are really proud we are South Korean. We are proud of our language. We are proud of our heritage. Not going overboard, not saying this is the best culture. No, I think that is not going to work because children are smart. They can see critically, as Dr. Yu pointed out, that these are good things about my culture, but these are problematic things about my culture. So I need to figure out which one is the best. So having that balance, those balanced messages for children, that these are the things that we should take pride in our culture. And also keeping in mind that, so there are two extremes. One is completely becoming American or completely becoming somebody who we are not, versus completely remaining who we are or who we were. So there are these two concepts. Family systems theory has talked about homeostasis and morphogenesis, that each family needs to change a little bit, but they also need to have some stable concepts or stability. So the stability could be teaching their children the cultural values and retaining some of the culture, but also be able to be open to change, because that's why we made this move. right? If we are voluntary immigrant, then we chose to come to a different country and change is inevitable. So understanding that from that perspective. So when children are picking up from each side and also from different sides, as Dr. Yu has beautifully shared, I think that's the healthy aspect of multicultural identity or bicultural identity, as you would say, because children also quickly realize that if they give up their heritage completely and become someone else, they will never be accepted as, because phenotypically they can change their color, they can change
Yeah.
their ethnicity. So they will still be Asian, or they cannot be from the mainstream. So children also quickly understand as they start growing older that they need to have a balance somewhere. So I see healthy version of bicultural or multicultural identity is connected to mental health, like how they are feeling about themselves, how they are thriving in, not necessarily thriving. I think I shouldn't choose that word, but being able to navigate both cultures or different cultures seamlessly. Dr. Yu, do you want to add?
Um, and you brought up the family systems perspective there too. And also, I've noticed that many immigrant families either become really enmeshed within their cultural heritage and practices, or if you are royal to your family, traditions or cultural traditions, you felt like you are disconnecting or you are maybe moving away from um, the family practices. So, in some aspects, we also have to allow children as well as other family members to create healthy boundaries within their family systems or subsystems. Um, and that might be really helpful for um, not just children, but other members in the family to maintain or develop their healthy identity in some aspects. And again, I mean, in the beginning of our conversation, Dr. Rana brought up it is a lifelong development.
Yeah.
So we will continuously invest our time and energy to learn about ourselves, and it's same for children too, and that's okay. Um, Sometimes we are going to struggle um, about certain messages, how their own cultural practices are portrayed in the media or news or current kind of socioeconomic situation. But then that can be, again, opportunity for parents and children to have some conversations about the recent event. Um, and I don't want I mean, I don't have a children of my own, but I see that it's not just about your own cultural heritage, but other cultures exploring other cultural ideas and practices. If parents really take that as learning opportunities, just like their children are doing, then um, maybe children might be more open to, um, receiving and exploring those different options as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rana and Dr. Yu. And I would like to add here, because I like this point of healthy boundary. I think that's really important. And, in Singapore, because, I spent almost around 20 plus years there, and my children were raised in that context, we had this Cultural Harmony Day. And I think that actually is being something that Dr. Yu is talking about. So we have this Cultural Harmony Day where children are being exposed to different cultures, and they are being, they wear their traditional clothes, their traditional, and then, share the sweets and, all the kind of the dishes. So that was pretty interesting because each child was given an opportunity to share about their culture, the stories, or in any way that they want to actually, talk about their culture. So I think that awareness is important. And also, I feel that that acceptance on the part of the parents when the child is being talking about or trying something about different cultures. So I think these two things are being pretty important, because otherwise the child will think that, oh, there's something different there and something different in my culture, as my parents are not being accepting and not even talking about it there. So I think that awareness and acceptance is being very important as a part of healthy boundary. Great. I think this is an interesting conversation. Dr. Rana, you want to add something here?
I also wanted to add, like Dr. Hyun-Kyung has mentioned briefly, like it's also important to keep in mind the socioeconomic factors, because as middle class parents, we are able to, or people are able to attend those events and to be able to go there. But there are some parents who are working two jobs or, long hours of job. So something to keep in mind, like how, when we are talking about these concepts, how different class, different, there are so many different factors to consider. So thinking about those families as well while we are having this conversation.
Yeah, it's true, actually.
I just want to add one more thing too. And
Yeah.
as Dr. Rana mentioned about this, families were working, a lot and with limited resources, and also their um, history or their sentiment with their own cultural heritage. Um, that can influence how children might see their own cultural ideas and practices. So, in that regard, it's not just about the children, immigrant children's identity, but adults, same way. Um, and some of us immigrated like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I've seen a lot of changes um, in that regard, but then still, depending on your socioeconomic status, you may feel like you are definitely disadvantaged and struggling with your own cultural identity. And that's gonna trickling down to your own children. Uh, and that can create some hard feelings about uh, their cultural heritage in some aspects.
Interesting. So when we have the children who have this kind of feeling and coming from different, diverse background, do you think that there are some long-term impact on these children or some long-term outcomes, for these children?
Again, it's hard to say because development is unfortunately not linear. It's like there are so many factors. And even with like immigrant families, as we are discussing here, I was thinking when Dr. Yu was talking about. So there are, I think it's Macy has talked about, there are push factors and there are pull factors. There are Ogbu has talked about there are voluntary minorities and there are involuntary minorities. So voluntary minorities are those who choose to come to a different country by uprooting their families and decided to become a minority there. Whereas involuntary minorities are like African Americans, indigenous peoples in the country who did not choose to become a minority, but they were brought here as slaves or they were colonized by settlers. So all those factors, like voluntary immigrants bring optimism. But if they were pushed out of their country because they were not doing well there, or there was a political persecution, like for a lot of Sikh immigrants from India, especially those who came after 1984, they have a very hard feeling toward India, their own home country. So in my research, I have found that they like to identify themselves as Sikhs and Punjabi more than Indians. So that identity, so those identity pieces are also influenced by what happened back in home country. Why did they choose to come here? And how was the reception here? There are certain sentiments towards certain immigrants, like, you are, anti-Muslim hate is not new. Islamophobia is not new in this country. So depending on who you are and how you're received and what kind of sentiments are there towards, certain groups, that could also influence how parents feel and what messages they are giving to their children. Like I learned in Sikh immigrant family with Sikh immigrant families that they wanted their children to be safe, because their children were called either terrorist or confused with Muslims. But on the other hand, they wanted to keep those, identity markers like long hair and bracelet and all those like visible markers of their identity. So there are a lot of factors that could influence what the outcomes would be. So it's hard to say, the children doing well today, will they be okay 5 years or 10 years later? Chances are that they are, if we're building that resilience early on, because earlier years are important for, brain plasticity and development. But we don't know. It's hard to say. There is no guarantee for that.
Yeah, that's true. And Dr. Rana, I want you to add more points here. So, what example that you have given us is about, a community, a group who actually has been, pushed from their country, and then they are being migrants here and being staying. So that kind of the family environment, basically, and the feelings that has affected these children, and it's being, not very clear like what could be the longer outcome for these children. It depends upon the kind of reception that they're getting here. But if we bring that same question for other families who are the volunteer coming here as migrants, like we talk about the parents who got a job here and they came on certain visa and now they are being a permanent citizen here. So how about these children? How about in such families? And these children, as they are being more influenced by American culture. So parents always have this kind of worry that if my child rejects the culture, is it lost forever? So how about in such context, do you think that these children will eventually reconnect with their heritage, or they just adopt this new culture in which they are born or raised? Dr. Rana, this is,
Yeah, for me, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it would be again hard to say. You might think like, why is it so hard to say? There are a lot of factors. So when people come here voluntarily, they have this. That's the hope, that they have this mindset that they are going to also learn something new, and they have this optimism, which is called voluntary immigrant optimism, that we are here because there are some gains. There are, they have moved either for better opportunities, job opportunities, education, and other perks to a different country if they are not being pushed. So those are the pulling factors in a country. It depends on if they are living in ethnic enclaves, that we would say, if there are a lot of Indians around them, if there are a lot of South Korean community around South Korean families, their socialization could look very different. And sometimes parents don't have to push a whole lot, right? It's like you're socializing with families that are from India. You are also having peers that are from India. And those peers together could either help or also direct you in a different direction, depending. Families who are living on their own, they might, or they are the only Indian family or South Korean family, they might either crave for that connection, or they might just go in a different direction, that I'm here to, I chose to come here, so let's learn all those things that are here to offer. It also depends on parents' own professions, like jobs. So when you're talking about parents coming on visa for certain jobs, sometimes there is this IT sector where there are a lot of families or parents come. Versus there are some who go into professions like Dr. You and I are the only Asian faculty in our department, although our department is very small, but we don't have a lot of Indian families here in this area and a lot of South Korean families in this area. So what choices do we have here? And we are okay, because in academia, I think our jobs don't give us any time anyways to socialize.
Mm.
So I think it depends on what kind of jobs and professions parents are in, like if there are peers around them, if their goals, socialization goals, affect. But one thing that we know developmentally, teenagers or adolescents, and regardless of the families, it doesn't have to be an immigrant family, there is a constant battle of control and authority.
Mm. Right.
Autonomy. They want to be
Yeah.
autonomous developmentally, regardless of the families. Now, in immigrant families, sometimes there is this concept called acculturation gap, that children
Mm.
learn the culture of US or wherever they have moved faster than their parents. Like even though I teach, my son corrects my pronunciation a lot of times. Like, those are some examples of like what they learn and what parents learn. And that's a different rate. So that creates that gap. Sometimes, Dr. You and I were having conversation, and Dr. You mentioned that sometimes children are also cultural brokers. Like they
Yeah.
translate, they interpret, if
Mm.
the parents don't have, and that shifts the parent and child relationship. It's like, oh, I am doing this favor to my parents, like, so I have more power, and that could also create tension.
Mm.
But where I'm going with this is that um, we can we can expect teenagers as parents to hear everything like that. Because I said so, you have to abide by that, because developmentally that's not going to happen. There is like this crave for, or this push for, that I want to be independent, more so
Yeah.
here, because I think culturally we expect adolescents, teenagers here to be independent thinkers. So I think that shift is important for families and parents to understand. And more we push something onto teenagers, it is likely that they're going to run away from it. So as Dr. Yu has mentioned in the beginning, having those healthy boundaries of those
Yeah.
communications, and also just presenting these ideas instead of pushing onto children. Sometimes there are also like, and it's very common in transnational adoptees. Doctor, you can speak more about that. Sometimes, when children are adopted from different cultures by white families, there is this desire to learn about where they were adopted from. So I think that's a very common phenomena in transnational adoptees. And I think it's also for young children or young people from immigrant families, that at some point of time, even if you were not able to successfully um, socialize them in your heritage, they might be inclined. But again, that's important to give them that space to be able to explore it on their own. Like religion is one of them. Like I'm just like, personally speaking, I never pushed religion onto my child. But there are idols in the house. There are like, sometimes we play music, sometimes there are prayers. So presenting that environment, but not pushing, and let the child explore it on its own when they have, that inclination. That's just my personal, philosophy. Dr. Yu, do you want to add?
Um, yeah, I just want to add one more thing, because parents, um, the time that they immigrated or time that they came to the, states or the new place, perhaps what they brought with them, the cultural ideas and practices, um, might be 10 years ago or something from
Mm.
20 years ago. Uh, it's already pretty old, actually, when you think about how rapidly the culture itself is changing and fluid itself. So, in some aspects, parents also have to acknowledge what they're preaching to their children might be something from the history, something not really present. So maybe children might have new opportunities to really kind of dive into new cultural ideas and practices. Um, I think that might be something for parents to remember along with the power dynamics that Dr. Rana mentioned about here, and along with the religion or other things, but creating the some, very daily practices, or maybe inviting their friends to home and cooking something, Korean food or Indian food. Uh, or fusion is okay too, in my mind. It doesn't need to be stick with this is a traditional recipe that we're going to cook this way, but allowing the creativity into that cooking, um, or different cultural
Mhm.
practices. Again, we gotta remember the culture itself is changing and fluid, and it's okay for us to adapting uh, and cultivating different things, putting things together.
And
Right. Actually, sorry, Dr. Rana, you were saying something?
I just wanted to add an example to Dr. Yu's example, or sorry, Dr. Yu's concept of cultural fossilization. I had a friend who grew up in Michigan, and her parents never wanted her to have tattoos or piercings. And then the whole family traveled to India one summer to West Bengal. And she said, all my cousins had tattoos and piercings. And I shared with my parents, this is the culture that you're talking about. So because of globalization, those things just change and shift. And if you look at teenagers' pictures across the world, they are very similar. They wear similar brands, or they want to look like, in certain way. So that was a good concept, Dr. Yu, that you brought.
That's is very right because I left India in 2000, so almost 26 years back, and things have changed a lot. So I think sometimes I feel that the time when when we left our country, we are stuck in that time. We think that our children should learn what we have learned, but we are not seeing that things are changing. Even people there in our own country, they have changed because the whole world is changing. So, and we are still imposing those kind of tradition and those kind of things on our children. So sometimes when I see where I'm staying here, in Austin, we have a big Indian community, and I can see that the parents have some unreasonable expectations from their children that they should do this and they should do prayer every day, and then I mean, definitely there are some religious practices that you may want or your family need to follow, but sometimes I find them these are very unreasonable demands that parents are being imposing on their children. So I think you know much of what we have discussed, it relates to, I would say, parent-child relationship itself, and which brings us to our second segment. And I want to now talk about the unique dynamics of parenting across culture. Though I'm sure we have talked about a lot of these things already here, but Dr. Yu, I would like you to, add more points on, what are the common source of tension or misunderstanding that between immigrant parent and their children. Though we have talked about it, but if you can just give us some kind of concrete points and examples of that, and how these differences they usually show up in our daily lives.
Yes, we kind of, Dr. Rana talked a little bit about this, but the power dynamics between immigrant parents and their children, uh, probably seen in daily life, um, and how children becomes the cultural brokers, or maybe they're socialized more in the dominant culture, so they know certain practices and ideas much better than children. Um, but then, if the parents are still demanding their power over or authority over their children, that can create tension between them. I think that can be the probably one example or one aspects we can easily think about. Is there anything else that we can add, Dr. Rana, perhaps?
Uh, I think I'm thinking of parallel frame of reference, which I think, Rena, you have mentioned, like how we want our children to be doing things that either we have done as kids or their counterparts in India are doing. Like, so is, they're so competitive. They have done this, what, like, like I remember one time I was in India taking care of my mother, and I called my son and I said, hey, I met a doctor here who is like 23, only 23 years old. And I was just like sharing, at my surprise. And my son said, oh, did you wish that I was a doctor by now? Because he was also about the same age. And I didn't realize that maybe that was the, internalized messages that children also internalize certain things that, so anyways, that parallel frame of reference is when parents are comparing their children with children in India or their home country or their when they were a child, but children are also comparing them with their friends' parents. His mother is so cool. Why can't you allow us to do that? Or, his father is, doing this. Why can't my father do this? So that constant comparison is also present in those parent-child relationships.
So you are being saying, Dr. Rana, that parents also compare and children also compare. Parents think that they're right in comparing their children with others, and then children, but they're not accepting their children comparing them with their friends' parents. Okay, they are being cool, they are being allowed to do that, and why am I not allowed to do it? Why there's a curfew time for me, and so on. And I think, so you see, I'm getting very interesting points, like healthy boundaries, and then we talk about space, we talk about this whole question of authority and this fight for autonomy. So it's interesting, these things. So
I sorry.
Please.
I also wanted to add like how there are different socialization contexts that are often competing. In schools, they might hear the message that you need to be independent, you need to take care of yourself, the individuality focus. Whereas in home culture, it could be like, no, you need to take care of your sister, you need to take care of your friends or peers. So those socialization messages could look very different. And then again, there is media. If media is portraying certain stereotypes toward families, certain families, that could also affect children in how they behave and if they want to stick with their culture or they want to be away from it because they don't want to be portrayed. Sometimes they also think that it's their responsibility to prove those stereotypes wrong, which could also be problematic for their mental health. So I think there are a lot of socialization context. And within families, I'm thinking of like, there could also, those socialization context could vary or socialization messages could vary. Sometimes there is this Hughes and colleagues have talked about, sometimes there is like emphasis on egalitarian values. That our culture is good, so is other culture. So respect everyone and you will be okay. Sometimes there is also this promotion of mistrust, that don't trust other groups. We are here to achieve something, focus on that. Sometimes there is also like and these could be mixed and matched, it's not either or. Sometimes there is like taking pride in the culture. Sometimes it's like one-sided messages, which our culture is the best. Like, how do we know when we haven't explored? So those messages could also look very different at familial level. And since children are also like, they're not passive receivers, they are active learners. They're also seeing what is happening. So they're constantly, again, going back to Dr. Yu's point on cognitive development, they are constantly making sense of those messages that they're receiving from different socialization contexts and how they are integrating that. And that could affect parent-child relationships too. Like, mom, how do you know that our culture is best when you haven't stepped out of your community or your house, or you just go to job and you come back home and then you go to temple, or you meet with your friends who are from India? How do we know? So I think those things are important to consider in parent-child relationships.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing is that our teenagers and our children, they're going through a lot, basically. A lot of influences that is coming from outside, from family. And I think this is related with their mental health also. because nowadays we are seeing a lot of children from migrant families. They are being going through anxiety, depression, and a lot more other issues. So I can see that so much of influence. They are being going through a lot besides their own goals and studies and everything. This whole concept and this whole context has been influencing their mental health a lot. So, Dr. Yu, does it match with something you see in your research, these kind of trends?
Um, One thing that I can bring up here is, I mean, all of us, not just children, but
Mm,
influenced by the current climate, uh,
mm,
like social and political climate, how that is stressing us. Uh, some of us may not really realize that that's the source of stress, but
mm,
that can influence one's, the depression or anxiety or feeling insecure about where they are at. And losing that ground of belonging to certain community or even the physical location, I think that can really create, um, yeah, less healthy mental state. Another piece that I want to bring up here, it's a little bit side story, but um, again, we can't not really generalize all of these stories in one category. Another dimension that we should think about is geography or location. Whether
mm,
you live in city, Austin, or like here, us, rural community, uh, and that can have a different influences on how children see themselves and understand themselves and feel about themselves compared to somebody who might be in really urban or city metropolitan state as well. um, so again, there's that complexity um, in understanding these phenomenon and concepts. So being able to really kind of, you know, take all those factors in consideration when we talk about the mental health issues or cultural identity and families altogether.
Yeah. So I
Can I add
yes,
something to
Doctor.
it?
Yeah, yeah. Please.
I was thinking about, when we are talking about mental health and depression, so negative stereotypes affect,
Mm,
like how people are being stereotyped by mainstream culture or media could affect the mental health. And so do positive stereotypes sometimes. So I don't know if you know the history of model minority stereotype, where all Asians are like, they are model minorities, they are doing so well. It came as a very like political stance where they wanted other minorities like African Americans especially to compare that, hey, these are also minorities, so you cannot make excuse for not doing well because they're doing so well. Whereas they
mm,
don't understand that, again, the difference between voluntary and involuntary minority, that when there is a generational trauma for years because of slavery, that could affect people very differently than someone who is choosing to come. Although there are some Asians who are also involuntary minorities, like who were brought as railroad workers or
mm,
farm laborers. Uh, but model minority stereotype in research has found that it affects Asian American youth or children very adversely, because there is this expectation that, oh, they're problem free. We don't have to focus on their mental health. They are doing well. And again, there is also this pressure. Not all children are built same. Not, all five fingers are not same size. So how could we expect that all Asian Americans will be doing so well in schools? And that positive stereotypes also affect parent-child relationship. Oh, you are an Indian child. Why can't you, we have to be good at math because that's the stereotype that people have for us. or you have to be good at computer or technology. No, not necessarily. So those kinds of like positive stereotypes could also affect children adversely and their mental health adversely, because they are silenced, that they should not be sharing their problems with counselors in schools. They shouldn't be sharing their problems with their parents, because the expectation is that my child will be comparable to this child. So I think that's also important to consider, that model minority stereotype is not necessarily a positive thing for our children in the communities.
Thanks for adding these points, Dr. Rana, because when I work with teenagers, and most of them, they are from the migrant families, and I can see that this is what is exactly happening, positive stereotypes, negative stereotypes. Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. And I'm glad that, I have both of you who have been sharing a lot more in-depth understanding of this whole concept of identity and child development in immigrant families. Dr. Yu, I have, a question for you. We hear often, and I would say it's a painful one, for parents who feel they have lost connection with their teenager. Maybe there's a distance, I would say, or a conflict, or they are just not talking much anymore. So is it too late to rebuild that relationship? And if it is not, then where do they start?
Um, Again, I mean, how old this child is, the immigration history and cultural history, all of those things needs to be considered. But I'm taking it as very optimistic stand. Some aspects, there's always room for revisiting where they left, and slowly but surely, everyone can work a little bit onto that repairing or restoring that relationship. It may take a while for them to feel like they are creating that homeostasis or a little bit more stable connections. Um, but as long as they are not losing their take on that faith, uh, or cut off from the relationship completely. I mean, that can happen as well too. Um, but how to rebuild, how to reconnect with one another. Um, Again, parents' side, openness to children's side, with empathy, um, listening to their stories, their struggle. And also, they also need to kind of reflect on their own um, exploration, their own immigration, their identity, as well as cultural pieces together. So it's not just about the task that children needs to work on, but parents also needs to work on their own to get to somewhere together. I mean, that's something that your question actually made me think about what things can be done. And something that Dr. Rana mentioned earlier, but participating in different or doing something with the children, small steps, those things might be helpful. Having, like, I think when we had a conversation earlier, Dr. Rana, we talked about sleepover. uh, so, openness to what's the dominant cultural ideas and practices, and with the learning mindset, parents also needs to invest, explore those options too. Another piece that perhaps seen in a lot of Korean literature or studies in Korean families, and I'm sure there are other cultural groups, but having this heritage schools, um, and learning not just language, heritage language, but also culture from those kinds of opportunities. So another, every Saturday or every other Saturday, learning a little bit about that language or culture might be helpful, restoring the relationship between parents and children. if they can afford, again, this is the economical kind of issues. Um, and if they can afford maybe the return trip to their home country, that can be helpful too. Or connecting with the relatives and friends and families using those WhatsApp or the FaceTime. Uh, so maybe a small step, but again, doing it over and over, those things might help restoring and rebuilding that relationship. Um, Anything else?
I just wanted to add a few things based on my own research experiences. I think language is one of them. Like if in my research, I saw that Sikh immigrant families wanted their children to learn about Gurwani, and in the Sikh temple Gurudwara, they had the script in Gurbani, but also in English simultaneously. Uh, Also, I'm thinking of if, like in those heritage schools, if teachers are second generation immigrants who are born here but also are interested, I think that's really a good medium because they know what the child is going through as a second generation or 1.5 generation, but also like it's a good combination in terms of, like, I'm thinking of heritage school in Seattle where my brother's daughter goes for dancing. The teacher is second generation immigrant, and they are able to bring the pedagogies that are Western, that our children are used to, but also having that heritage school. So I think that's a good way to look at it. Also, I'm thinking of, like, sometimes some communities, especially in my research, I found that they were really good business people, but they were not very well versed in making the connections across, or there was no bridge in the community for their children to go to college. Like, how do so having or identifying some cultural ambassadors within the community who could be a bridge between two different cultures, so that children don't feel that they're living in entirely two different worlds. Their parents' world, and then parents also have advocates in schools, in colleges, in college admissions. I think those things are crucial.
Interesting. So I can see, openness that I can see coming in our this conversation, empathy, and as what Dr. Anna mentioned about the mediums of connection. Basically, we can find some medium through which we can connect with our children, and I think many parents will find hope in what you both have just discussed. So, okay, now let's get very practical. So, the suggestions that you have given us, they are almost very, very, very practical suggestions but can you share with us maybe two or three evidence-based strategies? I'm sure one Dr. Rana has already suggested, because that's what she said, that it's from her research about having some mediums through which we can connect with these children, like second generation teachers and ambassadors. So maybe like this, some of other, maybe two or three more evidence-based strategies that parents can use, to help their children feel proud of both culture and develop a more strong, healthy identity. Because I can see that most of our conversation, that what we are discussing is more about, knowing a culture, adapting to the culture, and accepting the culture. But if you can give me one or two strategies for healthy identity, that will be helpful. Dr. Rana, Dr. Yu, anyone can actually suggest some strategies for us on that?
Uh, Earlier, I kind of mentioned about this return trip. That was the research I did a few years ago. These Korean moms actually spend their summer going back to Korea with their children, not just alone, but with their children. And while they're visiting their relatives in Korea, what they did is they were able to, I mean, they're middle class or upper middle class, so they were able to actually enroll their children to the schools in Korea, whether that's summer school or language school or cultural schools, and help them to socialize with other children who are in kind of similar situation. Maybe they live abroad and then actually come to Korea during summer and learn about language and culture. Um, so if there are some opportunities available for families, um, and sometimes certain nations and countries have the scholarship or the programs well laid out for families who live in abroad. So those can be utilized to help the families to have this return trip back home and allowing them, their children, to be exposed and socialized in that cultural settings. Um, I think again that could be a good way to, but again, it is expensive. It is,
Yeah.
it takes time, it takes planning, it takes resources to actually do all of those things. Uh, but you can do something more locally, um,
Mm.
utilizing those heritage schools or cultural groups, churches or temples. Those things are another good way to connect with their the culture. Another piece might be, I mean, Dr. DeBas, you mentioned about that earlier, but the harmony days or cultural
Yeah.
the celebration days,
Mm.
those can be opportunity for families to bring their cultural strength and assets and all those things, sharing with the rest of the community. um, Another piece that I've been learning from my research is more recent years with the K-pop and K-dramas really
Mm.
popular in the States. A lot of Korean moms felt really, oh my gosh, my children are asking me about this Korean words or what is this Korean song saying about? So again, those are interesting kind of flipping. Instead of you asking about certain things, children are asking you voluntarily because it is out there. They are absorbing those informations, those cultural messages outside, and then they are interested. They are motivated to learn more about it. So again, the opportunities might be in daily settings, those cultural settings. Uh, and I guess that's something that is interesting recently too and surfacing in my mind.
Thank you so much for sharing this. So, Dr. Rana, I have a very quick question. Something that is like a specific scenario that I've most of the time I have come across. Say a teenager says that they're ashamed of speaking their native language, maybe at school, with friends, or even at home. So, how would you advise both the teenager and their parents in that moment? Because we are all talking about the parents and what they need to do, but right now I want you to share with me what advice would you give to the teenager and their parents both.
Uh, that is a difficult one. I think I would like to investigate a little bit more. Why do they feel that way,
Yeah.
the teenagers? I'm thinking of a scenario where we had an incident where somebody commented on Indian food in the train, Amtrak train, some negative comments, and my son heard it. And after that, he didn't want to take Indian food to school. And that was challenging for a while. But then he came across certain friends who actually loved Indian food. And I think peers are so crucial in providing that kind of socialization or that kind of support. So I'm thinking, I was thinking when Dr. Yu was sharing the strategies on like visiting, I was thinking, phone conversations with families back home or extended family members, especially grandparents. And instead of putting that on that you have to practice your language, you have to practice your culture, making it more like relational, that it's important that we speak with our grandparents. It's important that because they're getting old, because they are fragile, they also don't know the language. So we have to keep in mind that we have to speak with them in Hindi or whatever the home language is. So making it like foundation is the relationship, and then the rest of the things come afterwards. So I would see the same thing in this scenario where I would like to be relational with my child, asking why, what happened. Because chances are that somebody might have bullied or somebody might have made fun of this child. So, what is going on mentally and relationally is the first step I would like to check in. Because if I keep pushing, no, you have to speak your language without knowing the reason, I think that could create more stress and more, again, friction between me and my child. So, I would like to learn what is going on. And if the child is young, I think it depends on, but I think you're talking about teenagers. Um, so teenagers are tricky because with young children, you have more say in schools. You could go to school and check with the teacher what is going on there. But with teenagers, I think it could be difficult. So I would start with asking what is happening. Why do you feel that way? And again, finding ways to keep connected with home country. Even though they don't want to speak language regularly, as long as they're able to communicate with their extended families, I think I will just take it instead of having these high expectations that my child should be speaking Hindi every time, every day. As long as they have that tool where they could still be connected to the culture to the extent. Like my son, when he came to the States, he could read and write and speak Hindi. Now he could only speak Hindi. He has forgotten to write or he has forgotten to read. And but that's not my primary goal, socialization goal. If he finds it fascinating, he would go back and learn, as an adult. Like, why do I have to? As long as he could speak with his grandparents and his family. And it's amazing to see him talking to them. Like, he could use the words that are from village or vernacular still. So I think taking also pride in what the children can do and to what extent. And also talking about the tools, what Dr. Yu was sharing, churches and temples. Instead of thinking churches and temples as the places for prayer, because sometimes there could be a resistance there, treat it as a like cultural place or cultural socialization, that we will get to see the families, you will get to see the friends, and even better if they have some roles as teenagers in the council, or if there is a group, connecting it with environment and more like current issues than with religion. I think chances are that they will be able to interact. So creating that environment for children where they could pick language or speak language or feel pride instead of imposing it on them. I think that would be my advice. I
And
don't know,
that,
Dr. Yu.
yeah, thank you so much. And I think Dr. Yu also brought one whole this concept of empathy. Maybe we can just bring that concept also in that, you talked about investigation and then, that empathy towards the child, step into their shoes and understand what they're being, why the child is being saying that. So yeah, that's interesting. Dr. Yu, do you want to share your views on that?
Um, the empathy is something that in our department actually learn our students learn a lot. How empathy as a really critical kind of survival as a human species. Um, um, we all need to have this empathy as a skill or part of the development. But the same idea can be even more amplified in parent-children relationship. Um, we, as a parent, empathizing our own children, especially in that immigrant family context. And I think actually not just the immigrant families, but the world right now, it is a scary place. And perhaps that's why many young people don't want to have their children. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, empathy might be something that we really need to kind of visit, and empathizing with what their children might be going through, how scary, how unstable world it is, and helping them to really, work together to be okay, uh, or creating a belonging community um, together. I think that might be something that immigrant parents can work even a little bit more on with their children. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Dr. Rana? Or
I think you covered it. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's a really a great conversation. Dr. Rana, Dr. Yu, thank you so much, for this conversation. I know, I'm walking away with new insights and a lot of new concepts. And I hope parents watching feel the same too here. So, to all the parents watching, you are doing incredibly important work. That's what I can say after this conversation. Raising children between two cultures is complex, but as we have heard today, it also filled with possibility. Your children are growing up with gifts. I would say that, two languages, two cultural perspectives, resilience, adaptability, and many people never develop. So thank you for being part of our community and for trusting us with these important conversations. Until next time, thank you so much.
thank you.